The story begins with Evan and Karen, who live a happy life in California with their 2 kids. Early in the morning, Evan and Karen enjoy some time alone, but their kids soon interrupt them, bringing a cake for Father's Day. The kids also have a gift for Evan, a clock they made themselves. Evan shows great enthusiasm and thanks both of them. The family sits down to have breakfast together. Karen's assistant Louis arrives, bringing catalogs for her upcoming exhibition. They all joke around, and Evan asks his kids if they have everything ready for the weekend trip to the beach with their mom. Karen shows Louis the main parts of her sculpture, informing him that it's still drying. Louis promises to pick it up once it's dried and take it to the gallery. As he leaves, Louis casually mentions to Evan that he'll see him tomorrow. Karen and the kids get ready for their trip. She tells Evan that his physical therapist, Vivian, will be there the next day. The kids beg Evan to come with them on the weekend trip, but he explains that he has to stay and work. Evan also mentions his shoulder injury, which prevents him from joining in on the fun. On a dark and rainy night, Evan works on his computer and listens to music on his fancy turntable. He gets a call from Karen, who tells him they already miss him. Evan reassures her and continues working alone in their spacious home. Later, Evan continues to work on his 3D printed models. He's deeply engrossed in his project when he hears a knock at the front door. Curious and slightly wary, he opens it to find 2 young women, drenched from the rain. They introduce themselves as Belle and Genesis and explain that they are lost and were supposed to attend a party, but mistakenly ended up at his address due to a miscommunication with their cab driver. Their phones, soaked from the rain, are not working properly. Evan, wanting to help, invites them inside to dry off and use his computer to find the correct address. He then goes to fetch towels and his iPad. When he returns, he finds the girls exploring another part of the house. He hands them the towels and the iPad. Genesis immediately starts trying to find the correct location using the iPad, while Belle engages Evan in conversation. After a moment, Genesis looks up, and Belle reintroduces herself, with Genesis explaining the mix-up with the address. Evan offers to call them an Uber, managing to get one that will arrive in 45 minutes. The girls then ask if they can throw their wet clothes in the dryer so they don't have to go to the party soaking wet. Evan agrees, fetching them some extra robes. He then takes Genesis's phone to dry it in a bowl of rice and heads to the kitchen to make tea while the girls change. When he returns, he hears music playing from his old turntable and finds the girls dancing and laughing. They comment on his extensive record collection, and he shares that he used to be a DJ in his 20s. The girls are surprised and impressed, especially when he reveals his age and that he got married young. As Evan checks on the Uber's status, the conversation turns more personal. Genesis asks about his family, and Evan explains that his wife and kids are on a weekend trip. The girls express sympathy for him being alone and offer a comforting hug. Belle notices a picture of his wife and compliments him on being lucky, prompting Evan to talk about Karen and her artwork. Belle is amazed to learn that all the artwork in the house is Karen's. And Genesis, who studied art history for a semester, wonders why Karen's sculptures aren't at an art museum. This prompts Evan to show them Karen's catalog for her upcoming art show in LA. The girls, impressed by his wife's talent, start talking about their personal lives, making Evan a bit uneasy. Not wanting to dive too deep into personal matters, Evan listens politely before steering the conversation to their professions. Genesis says they're flight attendants, and they playfully begin role-playing, which Evan tries to dodge by moving to another seat and asking about their travel experiences. The conversation continues, with the girls gossiping about their co-workers and subtly steering the topic back to intimate matters. Evan nervously checks Uber's status again. When Genesis asks to use the bathroom, Evan changes the record to one Belle chooses and starts DJing for her. Belle, delighted, tells him she's glad they ended up at his house instead of the party, and they begin dancing together. She flirts with him and tries to kiss him just as the Uber arrives. Belle goes to fetch Genesis while Evan gets their clothes from the dryer. When the girls don't appear, Evan goes to the bathroom and hears them laughing inside. He steps in to give them their clothes, but is surprised to find them in an unexpected situation. They say it's a surprise, and though he hesitates, he can't seem to walk away. The Uber leaves as Evan gets caught up in the moment with the girls. Later, they all end up in his bed, eventually falling asleep. The next morning, Evan wakes up alone in bed. He quickly picks up his phone, responds to his wife's text, and slips his wedding ring back on. Glancing around the bathroom, he feels relieved to see that the girls are gone. He gets dressed and begins checking the house. However, his sense of relief is short-lived. As he enters the kitchen, he is met with the sight of Genesis and Belle making a mess. Pancake batter splatters across the counter, dirty dishes pile up, and the smell of burning food fills the air. Genesis, flipping a pancake, smiles at him and offers breakfast. Irritated by their behavior, Evan sternly asks if he can drive them home or wherever they need to go. The girls laugh at him, which only fuels his frustration, making him realize he has a bigger problem on his hands. Suddenly, his phone rings, and he sees it as Karen. Panicking, he runs outside to take the call. Evan tells her that he smoked too much and passed out, so Karen calls him a lightweight. She begins telling him about the kids when the two girls appear on the glass door behind him. He moves so that she can't see them on the video call and tells her about his work project, that he's on a perfect groove and will finish it soon. The girls continue to mess with him through the glass doors, and Karen notices that he's distracted, so they end the call. Realizing that he will have difficulty getting rid of the girls, he walks into the house, cursing and yelling at them to dress. So the girls enter the other room. When he goes there to get them, he only finds Genesis. He then goes looking for Belle and finds her in his closet, wearing one of his shirts. She playfully asks for attention, but Evan, feeling uneasy, calmly guides her back to Genesis and gives them 3 minutes to get dressed while he waits for them outside. He finishes a cigarette and walks back in to get them when he sees both of them painting on top of Karen's sculpture. Evan angrily pushes Genesis and grabs the pen from Belle, asking them if they have any idea what they've done. The girls, unfazed, claim they were inspired by last night. When Evan threatens to call the police, they lie about being underage, trying to scare him into backing down. Evan doesn't believe it, but Genesis insists that a jury would believe them. Evan is left confused, especially after the flight attendant story they told him earlier, but Genesis reveals they got that idea from a movie. Evan doesn't know what to do, so he asks them how much money they would want. They say he's different from the others and shouldn't get mad. Evan shows them his wallet and asks how much again. Belle slaps him, asserting that they aren't looking for money. Just then, the doorbell rings. Evan tells them to stay there and goes to answer it, finding Vivian, his therapist, in front of the door. Vivian immediately begins to talk, and he tells her that he's feeling so much better and doesn't need any more therapy. The woman continues to talk on and on until Genesis comes out and tells her that he doesn't want her massage. Evan tells her to go back inside, and Vivian gets super upset because she loves his wife. He says it's not what she thinks, but she continues walking, just saying it is what she thinks it is. Evan gets back inside the house and finds the girls messing with his turntable. He pushes Belle away from the table and then tries to push both of them out of the house, but the girls continue to mess with him. As Genesis keeps taunting him, Evan keeps getting angrier and sternly warns her. Belle gets scared and grabs a statue to hit him over the head if she needs to save her friend, who continues to taunt Evan mercilessly. He lets her go and calls the police to report a break-in. Before he can say anything else, Genesis cuts the call short and asks him for a ride. They all leave the house, and he drives them to another suburb. When Belle leaves the car, she asks Evan if he would like to come in and meet her mom. The girls don't enter the house, but instead go the other way. Evan returns home and immediately begins to clean. He cleans up the kitchen and the bathroom, then he tries to clean his wife's sculpture. That night he takes a tablet, thinking it's all over, and that he's escaped the situation unscathed. Evan returns to work on his project when he hears glass breaking in another part of the house. He investigates the disturbance but finds nothing at first. Walking into the living room, he finds one of his family photos broken on the ground. When he crouches down to get it, Genesis hits him over the head with one of his wife's sculptures. Evan wakes up tied to the bed with Genesis putting on makeup and humming a song. Angry, Evan demands to be untied, insisting he's just a decent person who made a mistake. But she ignores him, continuing her activities without concern. After a few tense moments, Genesis leaves the room, instructing Belle to keep an eye on him, and sets a recorder on the table before exiting. Evan seizes the opportunity to break free. He shoves Belle off, quickly unties his arms and legs, and then starts to pursue Genesis, finding her eating cake. She stabs his injured shoulder with a fork, pinning him down. Belle arrives, declaring he needs to be punished for hitting her. Evan loses consciousness from the pain, allowing the girls to restrain him again. The girls decide to play a twisted game show, with Genesis as the MC and Belle as a contestant. Evan calls them crazy liars, prompting Genesis to blast painful noises through his turntable. He cries out, fearing deafness, so she stops. Genesis resumes the game, hurting him when he refuses to participate. The second question elicits a satisfactory answer, and Genesis resumes the noise when he pleads. Confused, Evan faces punishment again, but the doorbell saves him. Lewis arrives to collect the sculpture, and the girls hide Evan. Belle wheels him into another room while Genesis answers the door claiming they're filming a music video. Lewis senses something's off, and the girls feign innocence. Unconvinced, Lewis discovers the vandalized sculpture. The girls lie about a break-in, but Evan's noises alert Lewis. With this distraction, Genesis takes his inhaler from his pocket. He finds and begins to free Evan, but pauses when he hears the sculpture being destroyed. Lewis rushes over, yelling at the girls, but suffers an asthma attack. His inhaler is missing, stolen by the girls, who taunt him. Evan begs them to return it, but Lewis collapses, hitting his head on the sculpture's base. Evan's pleas to call an ambulance for Louis are met with laughter from the girls. Genesis coldly remarks that Lewis's death was due to his wife's awful sculpture. They drag Evan back into the house. The moment they step out, Evan tries to reach for his gun hidden inside a pot. Meanwhile, Genesis sends a threatening text from Evan's phone to Lewis's, aiming to mislead the cause of Lewis's death. They then shove Lewis's body into the vehicle parked in the backyard. The girls return inside and Evan fails to reach his gun as they resume their twisted game show. Evan insists he's a good husband and that his love for his family remains unchanged despite the situation. Genesis calls his family victims of his perverted behavior, accusing him of betraying them by sleeping with the girls. Realizing they intend to kill him, Evan pleads for his life, blaming the girls and denying his own guilt. Genesis coldly informs him he'll be executed at dawn and advises him not to waste his remaining hours crying. Belle apologizes, saying it's the only way. The girls dig a grave in the backyard. Inside, Evan manages to use his tablet to contact Karen, but Genesis comes in suddenly and snatches it away, and they change into more clothes from his closet. They vandalize Karen's sculptures and design models, mocking Evan while destroying the house and Karen's artwork. Suddenly, they find his emergency gun, and Genesis proposes a game of hide and seek. Belle unties Evan, giving him 30 seconds to hide inside the house. She promises if they don't find him by sunrise, they'll leave. Evan runs into the kitchen and grabs a knife as the girls count down from 30. They search the house, look everywhere, but fail to find him until sunrise. Evan thinks they're far enough, so he runs outside. Genesis catches him, mocking his futile cries for help, saying no one is home to hear him. At dawn, they drag his bound body to the hole they dug, placing him inside and covering him, leaving him partially buried. Evan pleads for his life, promising to behave. Genesis takes off his gag and he tries negotiating with them for his freedom. Genesis says they'll let him go if he calls his family and tells them everything. Evan agrees, but when Genesis calls his wife's phone, it goes to voicemail. Evan starts screaming for help, so Genesis puts the gag back on and tells him she hung up when she got Karen's voicemail. Genesis picks up a sculpture and acts as if she's about to drop it on Evan, but instead she places it beside him. Evan begins to scream and they laugh, saying they weren't going to kill him. Belle tells him it was all just a game. They reveal that all the men they've done this to are the same. Before they leave, they confess that they're not underage and do one last thing to ruin Evan. Belle posts the recording of her and Evan on Facebook. They leave the phone in front of Evan and exit the house. Evan desperately tries to delete the video but accidentally likes it instead. When his family comes back home the next day, they find the absolute mess that the girls left in the house. Evan's life was shattered, leaving wounds that might never heal. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. We've got a lot of great content coming your way. Take care and see you again.